Hello everyone, I am the Dire Duck. With the Murder Drones finale now being out for a while, it means we're not going to get any more Murder Drones episodes anytime soon. Therefore, it is a good time to reflect back on the show to some of its lesser discussed elements. So today, we are going to be talking about the show's most forgotten character. No, the other forgotten character. No, the other forgotten one. They're barely even a character. Okay, thank you. Right, as you can see, we're going to be talking about good old Fad. Though, you probably already knew that if you saw the title and thumbnail of this video. Anyways, Fad. Yes, poor Fad. You seem to have so much potential in the first two episodes. It looked like you were going to be a major player in all the events of the show, and even potentially Uzi's love interest. But then you just up and effectively vanish from the whole show. But why is that? This is a question I aim to answer today. We'll be having a look into who Fad is, what role he serves in the show, what happened to him, and finally, we can speculate on what Liam and Glitch could have done differently with him. Now, before we begin, remember to blast that like button and bash that subscribe button, as each one gets Fad one step closer to achieving plot relevancy. So, who is Fad? Well, Fad is the classic school jock type character, loving football and other sports while being seen as one of the more popular kids at the colony, with loads and loads of friends. The complete opposite of a loner type character like Uzi. Now, Fad is a part of what I like to call the forgettable four, being Dole, Jay, Khan, and of course Fad. Don't worry, the rest of them will get their own videos in due time. But the forgettable four all have some things in common. They're all set up in the early episodes to be major players in the show. They all do next to nothing after the main episode they are featured in. They're all hyped up as major characters again in the final two episodes, only for them all to do next to nothing in the end. So, what does our boy Fad actually do in the series? Well, in episode 1, he's shown to be the only student that doesn't outright hate Uzi, which therefore makes Uzi quite like him, though she shows it in a typical Uzi fashion. He is later shown to be the only worker drone with enough spine to actually stand up to V and J, while everyone else simply cowers. Not that it does him actually any good, but hey, props for trying. In episode 2, he's the worker drone that Uzi contacts while she's in her exile. He's the one that ends up bringing her railgun, and the person that tells Uzi and about Eldridge J. He accompanies the pair throughout the entire episode, helping where he can, until he gets dragged away by Eldridge J and needs to be rescued. After that, he is seen fleeing from Jay, but not before inviting both Uzi and N to his little shindig. A pretty good showing for your boy Fad so far, right? Well, savor that moment, as it's only going downhill from here. Speaking of which, in episode 3, Fad does nothing. Well, he does show off some cool dance moves, I suppose, but apart from that, quite literally nothing. In episode 4, he shows up with the rest of the campers, is the first to walk over to N and V without fear, along with Lizzie. He then vanishes by the time the rest of the campers get to the lake, but then magically appears at the end of the episode, after everyone else have already died. Now, while you may think Fad does nothing here, this is not true. It is episode 4 where we get confirmation that Fad has the power of invisibility. He is so invisible, in fact, he doesn't show up again until episode 7, where he is seen wandering around outside the bunker following Lizzie's directions. Though, after they spot Jay, they think it's a great idea to try and take her on in hand-to-hand combat, which is an interesting strategy, certainly. Though, to be fair to them, considering Jay's combat performance in the whole show, they might have very well have won that fight. But it is not to be, unfortunately, as Jay destroys the ship at the corpse spire and leaves before any fight could take place. Khan then shows up and starts ordering Fad and Lizzie around, with them both knowing better than to question Khan's crazed ramblings. We last see Fad staring down Jay with Lizzie while holding his trusty old pipe, setting them up for a triumphant fight with Jay. So how do you think that epic fight went? Well, yeah. They end up firmly on ice, slowly sliding across it. How impactful. They are eventually saved by V, with Fad having his biggest moment in the entire episode when he's smacked in the face by Sparky's tail. He then gets launched into space with the rest of the minor characters, nearly getting blown up by Sparky, and later falls back down to Earth. Fad launches the railgun at Uzi before pulling his classic disappearing act yet again, for the rest of the fight. He then shows back up right after the end to do some nice tricks with the skateboard, he cheers with the rest of the classmates, and then appears in some of the credit scenes. That's all they wrote for Fad, that's everything he ends up doing throughout Murder Drones. As you can see, Fad effectively does nothing of any worth post episode 2. With all his subsequent appearances, he either disappears throughout most of the episode, or does nothing of any importance, besides just being there, I guess. Now, why is this? Why did the episode suddenly forget about Thad? And why did his youth drop off a cliff post episode 2? Well, in Thad's case, the answer is a bit simpler than for other characters in the Forgotten Four. Thad as a character was conceived when Murder Drones was a very different show. As some of you may already know, Murder Drones has gone through many changes throughout its lifetime. From a very simple beginning to a more classical Liam story, with V and M being the main duo, with the Worker Drones being mere side characters. The show was then going for a more Monster of the Week kind of story, before finally settling on a more chaotic show we all know today. That isn't even mentioning all the rewrites that went on during the show's lifetime. Thad was one of the main characters that ended up losing out due to the changing nature of MD during its development stages, as he was originally meant to be one of the bigger players in the show, even being the star of episode 2 back when that was a zombie apocalypse story, but the rewrites ended up reducing his role significantly. As the show shifted to a more larger, long-running mystery around the solver, the use of characters like Thad rapidly diminished. As, what useful thing could Thad really do in those situations? And why would he even be there? In a show like Murder Drones that already leaves a lot of the main cast underdeveloped, what hope did a side character with little use like Thad have? It didn't help that Thad's role as the main classmate representative in the colony eventually fell more to Lizzie in the end, leaving Thad with even less to do. You can see this kind of thing manifesting more clearly in the fact that post episode 2, the point where the series shifts to a more larger overarching plot, Thad virtually does nothing, as they struggle to give him an effective role in the plot, as they simply don't know what to do with him, except simply chuck him into the background in most episodes, never giving him a real role in the show. However, you may ask, why don't they just kill Thad off then? If they weren't going to use him, then why not kill him off in episode 2, dying to Eldridge J? Why not kill him off in episode 3, dying to Dole? And why not kill him off in episode 4, with him being murdered by Solver Uzi? It would have made the main threats in each of those episodes seem far more dangerous, with them killing off an actual character that we have gotten to know, rather than a random background worker drone. It would have injected some much needed tension into the show, demonstrating to the audience that the larger characters can and will die. Well, the answer seems to be that they didn't really know where they were going with the story. Based on what had been said by Liam and Glitch in the past, the whole story was not fully written out from the start to finish. They had an outline of the major events that were going to happen in the show, but not the complete picture. So there was no actual pre-written fate for characters like Thad, and Glitch didn't seem to know if they were going to need a character like him again, so they chose to keep him around for if they ever did return to the colony in a major way, so they could whip out Thad as the main representative of the colony drones in that story. Now, as we know, that never actually ended up happening, but by the end of the show, Thad was a beloved character, so instead of simply disposing of him, they instead decided to just throw him into the final battle as part of Uzi's cheerleading squad. But the all-important question, how can we actually fix Thad's character? Well, we could do what was suggested earlier and simply have him killed off for an emotional payoff or horror moment earlier on in the story. After all, a scene like Solver Uzi would have hit a lot harder if it was a character like Thad being murdered by a crazed Uzi, rather than nothing character like Emily and Sam. It would have cleanly removed him from the board and given him a cool way to go out, while also injecting some much needed stakes back into the show. But I'm sure many of you out there would want to see Thad live, so instead we could give him some form of character arc, where he hardens as a person and eventually joins the WGF to make it a more active and useful organisation after witnessing its pitiful display during the pilot. This would be a great way of making Thad more active in the story and give him a connection to Khan that can be played on. Though the issue with this would be that it would require a lot of screen time to be placed on Thad to make the character arc work, screen time that the show could frankly ill afford. After all, if V and Khan are not getting fully developed arcs, what hope does a character like Thad really have? Finally, you could do what is probably the most obvious thing and give him more of a role in episodes 7 and 8, along with Lizzie and Khan, instead of the trio being near useless besides providing some comic relief. You could have Thad, Lizzie and Khan actually fight Jay like it looked like they were going to at the end of episode 7, keeping Jay from supporting Sin in the final battle, leading there to be 2 battles going on simultaneously which can eventually merge into one battle and both parties end up running into each other. You could have Thad doing little things to help support the main cast during the final battle, like Khan did when he shut the doors on Sin. You could have Thad hit Sin with his pipe. This would of course do next to nothing in terms of meaningful damage, but would be enough to distract Sin, either stopping her from landing a lethal blow on another member of the cast, or leaving her open for another attack by someone else. This would make the final battle feel a lot more like a group effort to triumph over an all-powerful evil, building up Sin to be more of an actual threat. Hell, you could even have Thad die here, heroically sacrificing himself to save the planet. It is something interesting to think about, certainly. Though, ultimately, Thad has the same issue with nearly every other character in this show. He is simply left behind due to not being enough screen time to go around, especially considering how much is taken up by Uzi and N. After all, any screen time that could have been given to Thad would require screen time to be taken away from another character, so would it really be worth it in the end? What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, that'll be all from me. Remember to like and subscribe and do all the other things that every other YouTuber tells you to do. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, check out my other videos, some of which are even good. Regardless, I hope to see you all again soon. Bye bye.